You're about to bake something. Cookies, maybe. Roasted vegetables. Chicken thighs. And so you reach into that drawer, that exact drawer, and you pull out the roll that's lived there for months. You don't read the label. Why would you? It's paper. It's been in kitchens for decades. Your mom used it. Your grandmother probably used it. It's parchment paper. It's just paper. Here's what no one told you. Independent lab testing sent to an EPA-certified laboratory found fluorine, a chemical marker for PFAS, the so-called forever chemicals linked to cancer, hormone disruption, and liver damage, above recommended levels in America's two most popular parchment paper brands. The paper touching your food. The paper in your oven right now. Today on Grocery Uncovered, we're doing what the parchment paper industry absolutely does not want us to do. We're showing you exactly what's in 6 of the most commonly used baking papers in America, and then showing you the 4 that have actually tested clean. Before we name brands, you need to understand exactly what you're being exposed to, because once you see the science, the anger makes sense. PFAS, per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. There are more than 15,000 known variants of these synthetic chemicals. Scientists can only directly test for about 2 dozen of them. So instead of testing for individual PFAS, labs test for total organic fluorine because fluorine is the one thing all PFAS chemicals have in common. The higher the fluorine level, the more likely the product was intentionally treated with PFAS. Here's how the testing works, and this is important because I want you to be able to evaluate this data yourself. Mammovation, a consumer advocacy site founded by Leah Segedy, described by Consumer Reports as the PFAS hunter, sends products to EPA-certified laboratories for total fluorine analysis. The detection threshold is 9 to 10 parts per million. Below 10 ppm is non-detect, meaning no intentional PFAS addition is indicated. Between 10 and 100 ppm is a gray zone, possible accidental cross-contamination during manufacturing. Above 100 ppm is the threshold where the composting certification industry says a product was likely intentionally treated. Now, why does this matter in parchment paper specifically? Parchment paper sits directly on your food in a heated oven. At temperatures above 350 degrees, chemical migration accelerates. Fatty foods and acidic foods absorb migrating chemicals faster than dry foods. You might bake salmon on parchment paper at 400 degrees. Salmon is fatty. You're creating a perfect chemical transfer scenario every single time. And PFAS don't just pass through. The CDC's 2024 report estimates that nearly all Americans, virtually everyone in this country, have measurable levels of PFAS in their bloodstream. Because these chemicals bioaccumulate. They do not metabolize. They do not leave. PFAS have been linked by the National Resources Defense Council and National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences to kidney and testicular cancers, hormone disruption, liver damage, thyroid dysfunction, and reproductive harm. Here's the timeline that the FDA doesn't advertise loudly. In February 2024, the FDA announced that PFAS-based grease-proofing agents were no longer being sold for food packaging in the US market. Then in January 2025, the FDA revoked 35 food contact notifications for PFAS in paper food packaging, essentially delisting the legal authorization for these chemicals. The compliance deadline for exhausting existing stock was June 30th, 2025. Here's the problem. Those lab tests showing fluorine in Reynolds and Kirkland, they predate the phase-out. Products manufactured from older stock may still be on your shelf. And the gray zone levels we're looking at may not reflect PFAS that was intentionally added, but your body doesn't know the difference. One more layer before we get to the brands. PFAS is not the only chemical problem in parchment paper. There are 3 distinct hazard categories in this industry, and understanding them changes how you shop. The first is PFAS, what we just covered. The second is chlorine bleaching, which produces dioxins. The third is quilin treatment, a chromium-based compound used primarily in commercial baking paper. Let's connect those to specific products. Reynolds is the #1 selling parchment paper brand in America. It is in more kitchen drawers than any other brand on this list. And in April 2021, when Mammovation sent it to an EPA-certified lab for total fluorine analysis, it came back with 14 parts per million of fluorine. Now I want to be precise about this. Mammovation's conclusion is that the 14 ppm result does not necessarily mean PFAS was intentionally added. The level is in the gray zone where accidental contamination during manufacturing is possible. Their exact words, "We cannot say that PFAS was intentionally added." However, that also means that Mammovation cannot recommend this product. That distinction matters for legal accuracy. But here's what it doesn't change. The fluorine is there. Your food is touching the paper. You're heating that paper every time you cook. But here's the bigger picture. Reynolds is owned by Reynolds Consumer Products, the same company that makes Reynolds Wrap aluminum foil. Their nonstick aluminum foil, notably, tested NON detect for fluorine. So the technology to make a product without fluorine contamination clearly exists within this company. They chose not to apply it to the Parchment line. In 2024, they generated $3.4 billion in net revenue. The cost of reformulating the most popular parchment paper in America is not beyond their means. The question is whether the consumer pressure is enough to make them care. The second most popular parchment paper in America, Costco's house brand Kirkland Signature, had the same problem. In the same round of EPA-certified lab testing in April 2021, Kirkland came back with 12 parts per million of fluorine, right alongside Reynolds in the gray zone. This is the invisible tax on the Costco bulk buy. You think you're saving money on parchment paper, and in dollars per sheet you are. But you're buying a 200-foot roll of a product that contains fluorine above the safety threshold recommended by a credible consumer advocacy organization. And because it's a 200-foot roll, you'll use it for months. You're running a long-duration, low-level exposure experiment in your own kitchen every time you roast those vegetables. Costco's Kirkland brand has made genuine efforts to improve health and safety standards across other product categories. Their nonstick foil and several other products have tested well. Kirkland is a dynamic brand that responds to consumer pressure, and in this case, consumer pressure needs to be applied. Here's the problem that isn't talked about enough because it doesn't have a brand name attached to it. If your parchment paper is white, not brown, white, it has been bleached. Most store brand and generic parchment papers use elemental or elemental chlorine-free bleaching processes. And chlorine bleaching of paper pulp is one of the most well-documented sources of dioxin exposure in consumer products. The safer alternatives exist. Totally chlorine-free manufacturing, abbreviated TCF, uses hydrogen peroxide or oxygen-based agents instead of chlorine. Some brands label their products as TCF. Others use elemental chlorine-free or ECF, which uses chlorine dioxide, an improvement, but not the gold standard. The safest choice is either TCF certified or simply unbleached the brown paper. This is not a boutique health brand preference. This is basic chemistry. White paper was made white by a process you should not be putting in your oven. This one is primarily in commercial kitchens, bulk food service rolls, and some imported baking papers sold online. Quilin is a chromium-based compound used to make paper grease-resistant and nonstick. Chromium is not a single substance. It exists in different oxidation states. Chromium-3 is relatively benign. Chromium-6, hexavalent chromium, is what the IRC classifies as a Group 1 carcinogen, definitively carcinogenic to humans. The simple rule: if you're buying commercial baking paper in bulk or buying an unfamiliar imported brand online and it doesn't say silicone-coated or PFAS-free, you don't know what it's coated with. That ambiguity should bother you. Your home kitchen doesn't need to run on the same chemicals as a 1970s industrial bakery. This is the bait and switch that catches out a huge number of home cooks. Wax paper and parchment paper sit in the same aisle. They look similar. They both come in rolls. They are completely different products, and only one of them should ever go near a hot oven. Wax paper is coated with petroleum-derived paraffin wax. When you put it in an oven above about 250 degrees, the wax melts directly into your food. Paraffin wax is a byproduct of petroleum refining. Some formulations include cycloparaffins, and some wax papers, particularly imported or commercial grades, have been found to also contain PFAS coatings on top of the wax. You're not just getting melted petroleum in your cookies. You might be getting melted petroleum with a PFAS chaser. The fix for this one is simple. Read the box. If it says wax paper, do not bake with it. Reserve it for room temperature food wrapping, sandwiches, and counterliners. It has legitimate uses, just not at oven temperature. The problem isn't wax paper existing. The problem is that it's physically shelved next to parchment paper in a way that makes it easy to accidentally grab the wrong one. This is the one that genuinely makes me angry. Because here's how greenwashing works in the parchment paper industry. A company slaps compostable, natural, eco-friendly on the packaging. Maybe they print it in an earth tone font. Maybe there are little leaf graphics. And none of those labels tell you anything about the PFAS content of the product. Consumer Reports tested food packaging across major US retailers and found PFAS in packaging from every single retailer they examined, including stores specifically associated with health and sustainability, like Whole Foods Market. Their 2022 investigation found Cava, Chipotle, Panera, Sweetgreen, and Whole Foods all had some packaging above 20 parts per million, the threshold Denmark uses to indicate intentional PFAS treatment. The word compostable on the label does not mean PFAS-free. And here's the composting irony that nobody talks about. PFAS chemicals are specifically why the composting industry developed the 100 ppm fluorine testing standard in the first place. When you put parchment paper treated with PFAS into a compost pile, those chemicals don't biodegrade, they migrate into the compost, which then spreads them into soil, which contaminates crops and water systems. The paper that was supposed to save the planet is poisoning the soil it gets buried in. The rule is simple, and I'll say it slowly. Compostable does not mean PFAS-free. Natural does not mean PFAS-free. Eco-friendly does not mean PFAS-free. The only thing that means PFAS-free is lab testing below 10 ppm. If the brand hasn't done that testing and published the results, you don't know what's in it. I want to take 60 seconds to be fair because I think good consumer journalism requires it. Here's the strongest case for the industry. First, PFAS are so ubiquitous in the environment that it is genuinely difficult to manufacture paper products without some trace cross-contamination. Reynolds and Kirkland's results are both in the gray zone, not the clearly intentional zone above 100 ppm. It is possible, and Mammovation acknowledges this, that neither company deliberately chose to put PFAS in their parchment paper. Second, the FDA's 2024 phase-out is real. Manufacturers have made commitments, the regulatory action has been taken, and the compliance clock ran out in June 2025. The products coming off production lines after that date should, in theory, be cleaner. The industry is moving in the right direction, just not fast enough, and not with enough transparency. Third, nonstick coating of some kind is genuinely necessary for parchment paper to function. Silicone, the alternative used by the clean brands, has its own debate. The EU classifies certain cyclic siloxanes, D4 and D5, as endocrine disruptors. Some health advocates argue that even silicone-coated parchment carries risk at high temperatures. The honest answer is, we do not have perfect data on long-term silicone migration at baking temperatures. Silicone is almost certainly safer than PFAS, but almost certainly safer is not the same as proven completely safe. IfUcare has been the gold standard answer in this category for years, and the lab data backs it up. When Mammovation sent it to the EPA-certified lab in April 2021, the result was non-detect, meaning the lab found zero detectable fluorine at or above the 10 ppm detection threshold. Zero. The product itself, unbleached brown paper with a food-grade silicone coating. It's rated for temperatures up to 425 degrees Fahrenheit. It's compostable under the BPI standard. And importantly, the manufacturer has responded to safety questions with direct, specific answers about their silicone formulation, citing both FDA and EU compliance. That level of transparency is exactly what the brands in Section 3 are not offering. When a company can answer the question, what is your coating made of and what are its safety certifications, that is a company that has thought about this. Cabite is a less well-known brand, but it cleared the same bar in Mammovation's testing, non-detect for fluorine. Clean result. It's also silicone-coated unbleached paper. For people who want a clean alternative that isn't IfUcare, whether because of availability, price, or preference, Cabite is a verified option. Here's something a little different. Patapar paper is uncoated parchment. It gets its non-stick properties from the paper itself, without any silicone or PFAS coating at all. This is the approach that sidesteps the coating debate entirely. No PFAS to test for because there's no coating to begin with. The trade-off: uncoated parchment is somewhat less reliably non-stick than silicone-coated options, especially for high-fat or high-sugar baked goods that really want to grip the paper. It's better suited to steam cooking, wrapping fish and papillote, and food storage than it is for, say, macarons or sticky buns. Understand the use case, and it becomes one of the cleanest options in the kitchen. Here's the simplest solution in this entire video: stop using parchment paper altogether. A food-grade silicone baking mat, the Silpat is the most well-known brand, but there are many certified equivalents, replaces parchment paper entirely for most baking applications. One mat lasts for years. No roll to buy, no chemical questions, no disposal. The key qualifier: buy certified food-grade silicone mats that are LFGB certified, the EU Food Contact Material Standard, or FDA compliant. Not all silicone mats are equal. Some cheap or uncertified mats from unverified sources use filler materials that can leach at high temperatures. Silpat specifically uses a platinum-cured silicone between 2 layers of fiberglass mesh. This formulation has a strong safety track record at baking temperatures up to 480 degrees Fahrenheit. For the applications where silicone mats aren't practical, food storage, wrapping sandwiches, lining a container, a beeswax wrap, or the Patapar option from winner number 3 are your best options. The point is not that there's one answer. It's that there are multiple clean answers available at a reasonable price, and the industry default sitting in most kitchen drawers is not one of them. Here's what I need you to take away from this. The lab data is real. The FDA regulatory timeline is real. The dioxin chemistry is established science. This is not a scare video. It's a simple, sourceable argument that the most popular parchment paper brands in America have not been tested to a standard that you should be comfortable with. You have options. If you care and Cabite have tested clean, Patapar is entirely uncoated. A certified silicone mat eliminates the paper question altogether. Switching takes about 30 seconds at the grocery store or one Amazon order. The cost difference is minimal. This is the most actionable video I've made. Now I want to hear from you, and be specific, because I read every comment. Tell me what parchment paper you've been using and whether you're making the swap. But more importantly, tell me which toxic everyday item you want me to investigate next. We've done fast food, we've done baking paper. What's in your kitchen right now that you're genuinely worried about? Comment below. The most specific, detailed questions become the next video. Like the video if this changed what you'll buy this week. Subscribe to Grocery Uncovered for the full non-toxic kitchen series. I'm Marcus, and I'll see you in the next one.